right, welcome back to Run It By My Lawyer. I'm super excited to be back. This past week, I received a lot of calls and comments and emails, and I'm super excited because I encourage everyone to run it by my lawyer, right? And one of the comments was, Joe Samo, you got to look straight at the camera too much. You look up in the sky too much. You look like Richard Nixon or something. All right, so I'll try to do that. The other comment, the ones that I like a lot as well, before we get to the legal run it by my lawyer cases that I want to discuss today, is that a lot of people are making fun of me saying, I literally just watched your show. I literally just texted you, things like that. I want to start the war on the word literally. You literally never need to say that word, all right? Someone I heard on the TV, they said something like, and we literally went there 5 times. He could have just said, we went there 5 times, right? All right, that's my grammar tip again. Recently, a little bit about what I've been up to lately. I went to Detroit, Michigan for a wedding. I have relatives that live in Detroit, Michigan. And my goodness, man, I do not know what the heck, how that city keeps going downhill. Anything we could do for the city of Detroit, it was like crazy there. I mean, what the heck, my friends? They have this like theory in Detroit and like this, I don't know, it's like an encouragement. They encourage each other. They have us like all these signs and everything. It's like Detroit versus the world, and Detroit versus the world. And I saw that everywhere. It's us against the world. It's Detroit against the world. And I'm trying to break it to them nicely. The world is winning. Okay, the world is winning, Detroit. My wife is from Detroit, okay? So what's it called? What can I say? Nicely? One point in our lives, we were debating, should we, buy a house here in San Diego? We were looking at a house to buy in San Diego. Then we came up, there's a decision we have to make. We could either buy a house in San Diego or we could just buy all of Detroit. All right. That's the choices we have to make. All right, a few other things. Now let's get to the legal cases. All right. I mentioned last week briefly for the people, the audience members that have used Coinbase to buy and sell cryptocurrency. Here's the deal. So Coinbase, in my opinion, had the very fraudulent way of pricing the cryptocurrency in both when users wanted to sell cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or whatnot, or buy it, they'd have one price displayed. And then after you go through a few screens, confirm or whatever, they like change the price and it's always in their favor. Okay. So I am going after Coinbase to seek some refunds of the transaction fees, and people have spent a lot of money on that. So if you have used Coinbase, you let me know. The other one is the T-Mobile users. I had some clients that had T-Mobile. They had a serious data breach last year. And let me, just to make sure I get this right. Yeah. A lot of users' social security numbers, their names, addresses, dates of birth, driver's license was hacked. So, and what happens in these cases is a lot of times if you do nothing, you might get a check for $10 one day. Anyone ever do that? Like you get a check for $5 or $10 in the mail sometime, or you can have a lawyer, consumer lawyers, sometimes what we do is we will kind of file separate claims so that, we get a proper compensation so that you could monitor your data and make sure your information didn't get hacked, like kind of like a security check, and you could, use the money to do something like that. And then I got some other calls, kind of, I don't know what's going on in the world. I have a lot of this employment strife, let's call it, right? Employers are upset because, it's like almost a lot of my small business owners, they keep saying, we cannot find people to fill these positions. And we're just giving the job to anybody, anyone that wants it. And a lot of employees are having problems. I know that, some places going back to work, not going back to work. So I wanted, and especially because I got calls from clients over this who wanted to run it by my lawyer. All right. So I wanted to go over some of it. Okay. So let's start with Okay, so and I'm gonna change their name, so I gotta like remember to. All right, so my friend and client Dahlia, so she has a place. It's what is it like? It's a spa. You know, they kind of like hair wax and hair removal and laser removal and I'm sorry, they don't do laser removal, wax removal, that type of thing. You know, like hair services, haircuts, okay, things like that, right? And she has one employee that she's having all these problems with, right? And so she calls me. She's like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to get sued and I don't want her to work for me anymore and all this other things. So I asked her a bunch of questions and it turns out, so this one employee does she's certified to do this, like the salon services or, spa services, whatever you want to call it, like removing wax, waxing hair off, things like that, right? So she said that this particular lady, she'll do like weird things, like she'll be on the phone while she's working and she'll kind of talk loud. Sometimes she'll like play her music loud. And then she kind of gets a little belligerent with other workers and gets in like loud arguments, things like that. And I told her, I go, well, what's the problem? Like, do you want to fire her? She's like, well, she alleged that they were discriminating against her. And I go, what do you mean you're discriminating against her? She's like, well, she's Mexican. And she's saying that, she told the coworkers, they don't like me just because I'm Mexican, right? So obviously my friend is in a difficult situation, right? So what I told her as her lawyer, I said, go ahead and fire her if you want, okay? You do not have to keep someone you don't want. And, the best thing is the other employees, they're going to write something like a little write-up to her saying, oh, this is what she did, this is what she was doing, this is why, there were problems with her, this and that, right? And so the way it kind of works is this. I don't want anyone to be afraid of the law, right? As long as you're not doing anything wrong. I asked her, like, is it true you don't like her because she's Mexican? My friend being Indian, but how do I say that? She's Indian, but not Native American. She's Indian from India, right? I always feel like when I say Indian, I don't want someone to think that I'm talking about someone that's Native American. So I always got Indian from India. So I told her, I go, well, do you hate her because she's Mexican? No. And has there been any comments to her, like anti-Mexican comments to her or anything like that? She said no. And then so I told her, as long as you have, some sort of writings that all these things happen, did you give her enough warnings? It's best to kind of give her a warning, preferably in writing, saying this is the problems and we want to work these things out, so here's kind of a warning. And you put it in writing. So God forbid you get sued one day for discrimination, you have a lot of these things in writing, all right? So employers are always worried about things like that. The other thing, and it was on the news, this was kind of a big deal, the baseball team, the Tampa Bay Rays. So it's June, right? So it's Pride Month. June is Pride Month. So the Tampa Bay Rays, the baseball team, they, like a lot of other baseball teams and football teams, they had on their jerseys, the pride logos and the rainbows and, pride, gay pride, that kind of stuff. So 5 players opted to rip off the pride logos, okay? So what did they say? Let's see, I just read this. So, I took screenshots. All right, so the 5 baseball players, Jason Adam, Jalen Beeks, Brooks Raley, Jeffrey Springs, Ryan Thompson. So these 5 athletes said, hey, based on our faith, okay, and we are not, okay, hold on. I want to quote them, so I don't want to say anything wrong. They said, we encourage, like, we have nothing against gay people. Gay people are fine. We love them. We respect them, this and that, right? Then they said, and then let me see. I should quote who or name who I'm quoting. Jason Adam. All right, so he's a baseball player for the Tampa Bay Rays. But when we put it on our bodies, I think a lot of guys decided that it's just a lifestyle and that maybe, not that they look down on anyone or think differently, it's just that maybe we don't want to encourage it if we believe in Jesus. who's encouraged us to live a lifestyle that would abstain from that behavior, being gay behavior, just like Jesus encourages me as a heterosexual male to abstain from sex outside the confines of marriage. Okay, it's no different. This is a tough one for employers, right? Because in theory, you don't have the right to free speech in with a private employer, okay? Because the private employer has the right to its free speech, okay? So in theory, like the Tampa Bay Rays, they could say, well, we are our policy is everyone's going to wear the rainbows, right? And if they don't wear the rainbows, then they're not following the policy. So we're going to fine them or fire them or do this, do that, right? In theory, there's precedent saying that an employer is allowed to do that because they have their own free speech right. But it gets a little bit gray, okay? And this is where lawyers love gray, right? Because this is where, it could be questionable. The players have the constitutional right to, their religion, and there's been a lot of laws passed in addition to the constitutional rights of practicing your own religion. There's a lot of laws that, like the Civil Rights Act of 1964, you can't discriminate based on religion, okay? And then there's also, you can't discriminate based on, sexual orientation. So now, if they don't want to wear the rainbows, right? Like, what's the deal? They're going to say, well, that's my religious expression not to wear the rainbows. And if the employer says, but that's our policy and it's our free speech that we want to support gay pride in June, we could have a very heated battle. Okay. And how's the umpire going to call this one? Let's see. My gut feeling is that in this situation, if let's say somebody is working somewhere like these guys and they don't want to wear the rainbow and the employer says, wear the rainbow or you're fired, I think it's close. I think the employee would win. I think forcing the employee to wear the rainbows and support gay pride, I don't think the employer would win that case, okay? I'm curious to see what you folks think and the other lawyers, what you think. Us lawyers are funny. I have this joke. If you ask 4 lawyers for their opinions, you'll get 5 different opinions, okay? Somehow. That's how weird we are, us lawyers, right? So I'm curious to see what other lawyers, but I don't think you could force someone to wear the logo of the rainbow on your work uniform. I think the employees would win that one. If it was a logo, saying something like, we sell the best coffee in San Diego, I think you could force that on the uniform, right? Because, it's going to be hard for them to have a protected issue saying, I don't want to wear we serve the best coffee in San Diego, right? But here, it would be tough to say for the employer to win that one. So that would be an interesting case. What the Tampa Bay Rays said ultimately was, that's fine. They don't have to wear the rainbows. I think it's because either their lawyer said, nah, we better not fire them over that, or they just didn't want to go down that path, whatever the business decision is. I do think the employees would prevail in that situation. If the employees, like if they said something, God, I don't know, like if they then put something on the jersey, like going a little, what I call a little overboard, like, I hate gay people. That one they could get fired for, okay? Because I think that one would cross the line, They don't have to go that far. And then the, a court would probably say that was, across the line, a little hatred speech there a little bit. And, you could practice your religion without having to say that on your jersey. So I think, do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is how like the courts decide things. It's like, well, they kind of balance the interests of the employer, balance the interest of the employee, that type of thing. I swear, there were so many cases that went to the Supreme Court of the United States over, a customer going to a bakery and saying, I want a wedding cake with 2 guys on top, right? And then the baker said, we're not going to do it. I cannot believe for the life of me, like, I would have never imagined cases going over to the Supreme Court over cake. But anyway, okay. So we'll see how that plays out. My gut feeling is that they won't wear the rainbows. It'll be cool, and we'll go into July soon, and it won't be a gay Pride Month, and I don't think the baseball team is going to fire those employees. Okay, the next one, another case, run it by my lawyer, my client Melanie. She, and by the way, okay, I like I said, these aren't their real names. Okay, I'm changing the names, except the Tampa Bay Rays. That is their real name. Okay, so she worked for a company, a store a clothing store on the beach, and apparently here in San Diego, some of those stores make a lot of money, right? And she wasn't getting paid overtime, okay? Or let me make sure I say it correctly. She was getting paid the same rate, okay, including during overtime. So, after 8 hours a day or after 40 hours a week, she wasn't getting that time and a half, right? Now, what I have told employees and employers about this time and a half deal is this. That time and a half, there have been like wars fought over labor laws. There have been strikes and there have been violence in these strikes, right? I mean, so workers have fought, and then as a result, the Congress and every state has enacted labor laws, okay? These labor laws didn't come from God, okay? They didn't come as a gift, all right? This is what I tell my clients. I'm just talking as if, I tell my clients as if an employer has this type of case, right? Is that, so what I mean by that is that employers have to abide by labor laws, or there are ginormous penalties, okay? And overtime is one of those things. It's like, so when my friend Melanie was discussing this, she's like, well, the employer, he's like, it's a small business company, right? They're like, well, okay, fine. So a time and a half, we probably, owe you about $4,000, for what that extra half would have been. And I told her, I said, that's crazy, because they would have to pay you a lot more than $4,000. There are the penalties, in addition to that, there's things like, they're called waiting time penalties because they're getting the money way later. They have to pay, every paycheck was then incorrect because it didn't reflect the proper, amounts and or overtime amounts and things like that. So all of that is wrong. And every time there's a paycheck that's wrong, it's like a per paycheck violation type of thing. Or it could be if it's, if the violations are just, like I'm alleging they're true, let's say, right? And then there's also violations of, like I said, the waiting time penalties, the paycheck penalties, and then also in theory, like then there's also, because if they would have gotten that extra money, they would have had different like tax withholdings and tax payments. So there's like all those things got to be sorted out. And believe me, for the lawyers that also do employment law cases, they're like yelling right now, oh, don't forget this penalty, don't forget that penalty, right? There's like so many penalties. And the other type of cases that are the biggest deal in the world is freaking lunch breaks, okay? For some crazy reason, well, not crazy reason. Again, these were fought, like fought. And then so eventually there's all these rules about when they have to take a break and how long the lunch break has to be and how it has to be administered and things like that. And anytime an employer violates it, the laws, and it's not just California, it's a lot of states, and there's also federal rules about this in terms of how it has to be done. And if it's not done just right, the labor law comes down. So I've had a lot of those type of calls from both employees and employers. And, that's why I had that one case from the Dahlia, the employer, and then the other one from the employee side. These cases go the labor law. My best advice to an employer is make sure you understand the overtime rules, the break rules, the paycheck rules. Oh, the other thing is, and if an employer fires someone, they have to give them the last paycheck like that same day that they fire them. It's like, and here's your final paycheck, because otherwise that's another violation. All right, so let's move on. Let's see. And then I got another case. Another person wanted to run it by my lawyer. This one was, God. I used to do some family law. I don't do that kind of work nowadays as much. So this poor girl, I mean, she's pregnant, not married, and she asked me, well, what are, I guess her and the dad are fighting, or they're arguing about where to live and what to do, things like that. So she asked me, what are California rules of custody and support? And that is what we like to call a loaded question, or what's the right word? That's like saying, like, what's the meaning of life? Something like that. Like, it's not an easy answer. So for her, I told her, well, it's gonna, one of the lawyer's best answers is that, well, that's gonna depend, it depends. If God forbid, you and the dad start fighting right away, like right when the baby's born, or even before the baby's born. There have been cases that I've seen where it was, I call it 18 years of litigation. Like, it's a freaking nightmare. It's so sad, right? So I told her the law in California, just like in most states, they for custody and things like that, they kind of use the standard. They call it the best interest of the child. So let's say, she wants to move out of San Diego to Los Angeles, where her family and live, and that's where she grew up, or whatever, right? And then let's say the dad wants to stay in San Diego. That's kind of what she anticipates happening. So then she told me, well, what's going to happen? Like I said, that's going to depend down the line. Who's going to convince the judge and the court what is better off? That's kind of the standard. And like I said, it's the standard for most states. There is a misconception that it's always, the mother wins. It's not necessary. It's not. I don't think that's necessarily true. The way the California court system would work there would be, if she wants to move to Los Angeles, she would have to show kind of like the baby is better off living with her in Los Angeles than the baby would be in San Diego. All right. And then I told her, I go, man, I hope there's a way that you two could resolve things amicably. I think that's why I didn't do family law, is because I always try to help these people resolve things amicably, and then what I realized down the line was that's why they're going to lawyers, because they can't resolve this amicably. So that's why they do that. All right. Something that was very funny in the news. I don't know if very funny was the right word. So the justice of this, or a Supreme Court justice, Brett Kavanaugh, right? So some guy was near his house with a loaded gun. Okay, well let me say it specifically. So there's this guy. His name is Nicholas Roski, 26 years old, from California. Come on, my fellow Californians, don't do this. So he travels to Maryland, and he finds out the address of the Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. So he goes to his house, okay, and he has with him, okay. Okay, he has a loaded gun. It's a Glock 17 pistol. He has a tactical knife. All right. What, you couldn't just get a butter knife? 2 magazines. Okay. One of them was Playboy. Just kidding. 2 magazines with the ammo to put in the gun, a bunch of ammunition, pepper spray, and zip ties. Okay. And just in case that's not enough, he had with him a hammer, screwdriver, nail punch, crowbar, pistol light, and duct tape. Okay. Now, what he did, okay, he calls 911 and he tells 911, hey, I'm very upset and I think I'm going to kill a specific Supreme Court justice. Why in the world would he do that? I don't know, but that's pretty bad evidence, okay? And it may come down to a very, very interesting legal case in the sense that if they charge him with an attempted assassination of a United States Supreme Court justice, okay, if he was guilty of that, he would probably spend the rest of his life in prison, okay? So when I've had some criminal law cases, I've told people, it's kind of like I get involved too late. Obviously, they don't call me before they think about doing this. They call me after, right? And it's like I think this is why criminal defense attorneys say to people, keep your mouth shut. Had he not called, I wonder what would have happened if he didn't call the police and he was just walking around and somehow they saw him. And if he just kept his mouth shut, they would have had a much tougher time proving exactly why he was there, But with that 911 call, I think they've got him for attempted assassination of a United States Supreme Court justice. So I'm not sure if we're going to ever see Nick Roski hanging out anytime soon, at least in the next 20 years. That's my prediction. All right, maybe after 20 years, he'll be out. We'll see. Well, as I always say, I love hearing from you. And keep it up. Keep running it by my lawyer. You can call me 619-672-1741. I wanted to have kind of a lighthearted discussion today after our, Second Amendment gun cases podcast the last two. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And as always, run it by my lawyer. I'll see you folks next week.